Last night when we were in the venue preparing, my colleague Mike Reed said to me, "What is a singularity?" And I said, "I actually know this one because I have a PhD in mathematics from a previous life, and so I do know what a singularity is. So I'm going to explain, and then we're going to go to our panelists to go further." So
makes it easier for us.
Yeah, makes life easy. So the point is, if you've got a function, if I'm allowed to use one mathematical term, that has a point at which you go to infinity, that's called a singularity. So an example is something like the function 1 over x. As x gets smaller and smaller and smaller, 1 over x gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So for any number that's not 0 but is nearly 0, you can say what 1 over x is, but you can't say what 1 over 0 is. It's infinite. It's not got an answer. It's a singularity. So if the singularity is near, I think that means the end of the world as we know it. I think that's the point of the title. And I'm going to start with José Cordeiro. Am I right in my understanding of what a singularity is and what you mean?
Well, sure. The concept actually comes from...
Sorry, we'll see if your mic is...
It's plugged? Oh.
Sorry, the slight mic
Hello?
problem.
Now? Now I think it's okay.
Okay,
yeah.
great. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, basically the idea of singularity comes from science, mathematics, and physics. Also in physics, it's very well known, a black hole is a physical singularity. We don't know what is beyond a black hole. So based on these ideas, some people, actually from science fiction, proposed the idea of a technological singularity, which basically is the point where technology changes so fast that normal humans, non-enhanced humans, we will not be able to keep up with the pace. I have a shorter, nicer definition. Is the moment when artificial intelligence reaches human intelligence level, and that is the last invention humans will ever make.
And do you believe the singularity is near?
Well, it's going to happen I can tell you the dates. It's going to happen between 2029 and 2045. Actually, I'm a professor at Singularity University. In the video above, you saw actually my boss, Vivek Wadhwa, who is the Vice President of Academics at Singularity University. And we actually expect it to happen sometime between 2029 and 2045. And I have actually one slide that I wanted to show about that, because even Time magazine, I'm sorry, is not competition to The Economist, okay? Time is just for the public who doesn't have, the interest or the ability to read more understanding things. But anyway, there is one slide.
We didn't pay him for that, I promise.
Time magazine published a few months ago a cover article about the singularity. And I don't know if they want to show it.
Do we have this?
Let's
Yeah?
see.
Perhaps. Why don't you keep... Oh, there we go.
Okay, yeah, well, so you see, a few months ago, Time magazine came out with that cover issue. 2045. They want to be conservative, and that is why they take the latest possible year when this will happen, that we think is going to be 2045.
Have you got a time estimate?
It's not that close. It's not that close.
When is it?
We see there is a lot of things happening, of course, all over the place, and a lot of technical or technological results, but a very slow, I think, theoretical progress. And we still, for example, for things like the singularity, the computational singularity to happen, we are still dependent today of the basic laws that put together all the computing, communication, and control stuff that we use that date from the 30s and 40s. Basically, and there is not a lot of what we could call fundamental theoretical progress that would make in this short amount of time. We're talking about 30 years.
30, but so much has changed in the last 30 years. I mean, and it seems to be getting faster. I mean, I'm intuitively on board with this sort of...
Seems to be getting faster, but if you look, for example, at processors, if you look at raw computing power, computers are not getting faster. They're getting more cores. We are getting more computers. Smaller computers are not getting any faster. When you say talk about this thing here. This thing here is sort of a two-core computer. It's got several gigabytes of memory. It's got a touch screen. It's got this and that. But behind it, there is no increase in raw computing power. There is more processors, not more absolute power. And in order for that to happen, for that cover of time to happen, there are several other things that have nothing to do with power or algorithms or anything like that. They have to do with batteries. They have to do with batteries. They have to do with energy. How are you gonna, for example, keep cool a brain that you're gonna put several gigabytes of memory and several gigaflops of computing power inside it? You're gonna actually cook it.
I mean, I'm interested that, our skeptic just says it'll be a little bit longer. There
I'm
isn't
not skeptic. I'm just saying that it's not going to happen in that time frame.
But I mean, you're not saying it's not going to happen at
Yeah.
all. So, it's near or possibly semi-near is the only question, the
Well,
point of discussion here.
I think it's going to happen actually faster than we expect. And let me show you then the second of 3 slides, so that you see Moore's law. Gordon Moore was the co-founder of Intel, and in the 1960s, he discovered that the processing power of computers was doubling every 2 years. Then in the 1990s, he realized that he was wrong. It was not every 2 years, but it is every 1.5 years. This trend is actually accelerating. I want to show it quickly. I always show this to my students, how computer memories, Moore's law applies into many things, processing power, also memories and so on. This is what we used 30 years ago, the IBM punch cards. And this was 1K of memory, basically 10 times 100, which gives 1K. But this was bad because the IBM punch cards, once you punched them, you could not reuse them. So the first electromagnetic memories were invented. And this is actually a floppy disk of 8 inches, and it is also 1K. So 30 years ago, we had 1K mechanical and 1K electromagnetic. 1K and 1K in Spanish, we say un K, y un K is 2 Ks, well, actually 1 caca, 1 caca. We had 1 caca 30 years ago. Then we moved into into these ones, which is 5¼ inches, and this has 512 cacas. This has, 15 years ago, 1.4 megas. And if you come to Korea, where I'm actually working now, I'm working between Korea and California, you can buy one of these beauties. This has 128 gigabytes. This is basically a computer already, 128 gigabytes. And talking about Moore's law, actually Intel said that this will apply for the next 20 years because they are beginning with the first generation of 3-dimensional chips next year. The first generation of 3-dimensional chips. So this is actually going to accelerate, We expect that in 5 years, it might be every 1 year as opposed to every 1.5 years.
3D chips is not more raw power, it's just more chips.
But even if it is longer, then, it could be longer, it could be shorter, but will we be ready? Because it's not, what interests me is not how we do it, it's what happens next. What happens when you go past the singularity? It's a question that doesn't even make sense, I suppose, but we are going to go past it. Time isn't going to stop. Can you predict past a singularity? Can you try?
If you were to believe it in the way it's proposed in the singularity is near, it actually means that we are going to be redundant.
I still like being me, so I don't mind.
We like in we here. We're going to be redundant. I think that's something like some time ago, Bill Joy wrote a paper, actually a long article in Wired saying I don't remember the right title of the thing. It was something like why the world doesn't need us or something like that. And that's one of those self-unrealizing prophecies. If you say that we are going to be made redundant by something, we are going to work not to be made redundant by it. When you talk about the singularity in the way, again, that is proposed in that book that's in the slide there, we are talking about a point in which artificial intelligence or network computing power is going to start generating things that we will not be able to understand. It's not that we're not going to be able to use anymore, but we're not going to be able to understand.
But that doesn't feel very different to now to me. Because the world is full of things I don't understand. So maybe we'll just be from 99% of people don't understand to 100%. Is that a big difference?
There is a big difference because the world is being divided. There is a singularity happening it's been happening for a couple of decades maybe, that the world is being divided by people who program things and by people that just use the programs. So there is a big division, right? The
Sure,
first
and I
ones are
know which
called
side I'm on.
hackers. The first one are called hackers. The second ones are called users. So the more we go into the future, there's going to be such a division. People that understand how society is programmed and can actually program it, and people that are going to be just users.
But that's to say that all of life is what we use in the way of technology. I mean, I happily admit I don't understand any of it. I just use it.
And you have a PhD in mathematics.
And I have a PhD in mathematics, but it was very, very pure mathematics, I'm sorry to say. Totally useless in every possible moment of the rest of my life.
Right.
And
At least you enjoyed doing it.
yeah, I
maybe.
enjoyed it. That's the point, isn't it? I have a life anyway. You know, I use
Yeah.
my computers, but it's not going to stop me loving my kids or,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
Right.
wanting to have kids or any of those things that people do want to do. So, I mean,
Yeah, well, the point is really fundamental because we think we are coming to the age of to the end of the human age, and we will move into the beginning of the post-human age.
but we'll still be here.
Um, the, yes and no. Actually,
Listen, your dates were well ahead of the age I intend to die at, okay? I'm going to still be here.
well, you know, the post-humans will be so much superior to us. And I think that most of humanity will move into that phase, but it is probably not the case. I am from Venezuela, and between Venezuela and Brazil, we have some Indians, for example, and we had an interesting session before, but we have the Yanomami Indians. They don't want anything to do with a modern civilization. In the USA, there are the Amish communities. They don't want to use electricity. They don't want cell phones. They don't want computers like you do. And actually, part of the humanity might not want to evolve, and that is okay, and they will stay as they are. But most of humanity, I would say, except for the Yanomamis and the Amish, and maybe some other people, yeah, will stay. But it is irrelevant in a way, because for post-humans, what non-enhanced humans will do has no interest or no importance. For example, when was the last time that you talked to an ant or a chimpanzee?
You got me there.
So you see, for post-humans, you know, they don't
No,
care.
but can I not be a post-human without understanding it?
Again, it's like asking a chimpanzee, can the chimpanzee imagine what we do? Can an ant or a mouse imagine what we do? I don't think they can. I don't think we will be able, if we do not enhance ourselves, we will not be able to imagine what a post-human
But I
will
could
do.
enhance myself without understanding the enhancement, no?
Yeah, actually, many people drive without understanding anything about a car.
Like me, yeah.
So, but Google cars are coming, don't worry. Google cars that don't need a driver anymore. Artificial intelligence, by the way, artificial intelligence. So anyway, what is happening is really fascinating. Singularity University, where I teach, was actually inaugurated in 2009. It is in NASA Ames in Silicon Valley, in the center of Silicon Valley, in California. And one of the speakers at the inauguration was the governor of California. If you remember, in 2009, the governor of California was Arnold Schwarzenegger. And when he spoke at the inauguration of the university, he said, I'm so happy, finally an institution backed by Google and by NASA that sees what is going to happen to the world. Because the science fiction of today is the science reality of tomorrow. That are the words of Arnold Schwarzenegger, and when he finished his very interesting remarks for the opening of the university, he said at the end his famous phrase from Terminator, he said, I'll be back. And now that he's no longer the governor of California, he's actually thinking about starting Terminator 5.
Is that good news?
Oh, I liked a few of the Terminator films rather a
Wow.
lot. I'm actually somewhat
don't know
stuck.
how-
I don't quite know where to go with this conversation. I don't know if anyone else is feeling the same. I mean, I've been told that I'm essentially an ant compared with future humans.
Let's just put a sort of a...
The Economist
not a
will still be
small-
very smart, can I just say?
a small observation on this thing of enhanced humans. You're looking at several of them here. You know, we are enhanced by microphones, we're enhanced by glasses. For example, if I take these glasses, I don't see anything. because I have sort of 14-degree myopia in this right eye here, so I actually don't see even you here. So we've been enhancing ourselves for a long time now, and you can do things in laboratories right now, for example, increasing by 25% the useful memory of rats, lab rats, by just redesigning the program that actually creates neuronal memory. You can do that in laboratories, and it works in some sort of, you could quote, perfect way right now. And we know what happens when you do that in laboratory. First it's rats, then it's small macaques, then it's humans with huge problems that are unsolvable by any sort of way, then very rich people, then the state health system. In the case of Brazil, the SUS, S-U-S, right? So what happens with this singularity thing and maybe enhanced humans is that are people actually going to do it? Are people going to use the results of that on themselves and for themselves and with themselves and other people in a sort of any large-scale way? I think in the beginning it will seem quite strange, but after maybe a few decades, it's going to be absolutely normal, because you could think like, okay, you're a mother, I'm a father, and we have this opportunity of getting little Pedro a 25% more memory.
Yeah.
Would we do that or not? Well, it all depends. Is the mother of John, his little colleague, going to do
Do it
that?
as well.
If she's going to do it, we're going to do it as well.
I mean,
So
what
it's
you're
a sort of
talking about there is an
collective stuff.
arms race. You're talking about an
Yes.
evolutionary arms race.
Yes.
I had the great pleasure some years ago of going to the 30th birthday party of Louise Brown, who you may know the name. She was the
Yeah.
world's first IVF
Yes.
baby. And I was there where she was conceived in Bourne Hall, which is in Cambridge, near to London. And to prepare for this, I read back the sort of coverage at the time, what people were writing, and people felt it was sort of an end of history. They were genuinely worried that IVF babies will be born without souls, or I have 2 IVF babies myself, by the way, and they're both quite normal. So, I'm also enhanced. I'm an enhanced mother. And it was extraordinary to read what people were worrying about that just seemed so unimportant now and not really a worry at all. Now it's a great opportunity for those of us to become parents. I mean, surely it's the same thing. It's blowing it out of proportion to say it's a singularity. Maybe it's a bigger thing than anything that's happened before, but we've lived through, agriculture. We've lived through urbanization.
Yeah, but actually we will be enhancing our brains, and that is radically different.
No, we read now. Reading is enhancing our brains. I mean, reading was probably the biggest change that happened to our brains
Sure.
ever.
But with the same biological brain. For example, if you compare our brains to the closest animal brain, which is a chimpanzee brain, we actually share 99% of the genome, and still that 1% difference in the genome makes our brain so much bigger and unique and different. And also, we share 90% of the genome with a mouse. So I like to give this example because we are like, if you want to say 10% above a mouse and 1% above a chimpanzee. And evolution has not stopped. We are still evolving biologically, but biological evolution takes millennia, actually even longer. And
But we're evolving culturally as well. I mean, we're creatures
true.
that are already augmented
yes.
by something outside our own brains.
Absolutely, but in 20 years, we will be able to enhance our brains 1%, 10%, 100%, and that is radically different, and there is this convergence of 4 technologies, and that's to show my final slide, please,
Okay.
Which are the 4 main technologies that were chosen by the National Science Foundation in the United States, and they talked about 4 main areas that will radically change, technology, humanity, and humans. Nanotechnology that studies atoms, biotechnology that studies cells. Those 2 technologies, nano and bio, define the hardware of humanity, the hardware. Nano and bio are the hardware. And also they are related. Nano is like bio artificial, or vice versa. Bio is like natural nano. So that's the hardware on top. And then the software is info, that studies bits and bytes, and cogno, that studies neurons. And this is the software of humanity. And also one is natural, cognotechnology, and one is artificial, infotechnology. And all of these are changing radically because of exponential changes in computing power. All of these areas, nano, bio, info, and cogno, And so we are going to have this point where we go not to infinity, but something radically different.
Normally, when I'm interviewing somebody, either on a stage or for an article, I try and ask the questions like, can you give me an example? Who's going to make money out of this? Sort of rather practical questions. I'm genuinely flummoxed. So I'm going to open it to the audience and hope that you can ask whatever you like, but I'm hoping for rather specific questions. Does anyone have sort of concrete questions that they'd like to give this extraordinary pair of speakers? You're all as flummoxed as me, I'm afraid, which means I'm going to have to soldier on, unenhanced. Can we not have a hive mind sort of effect here? I think we do have a question. We have a brave person up here.
Is it a normal or an enhanced question?
Well, we'll have to wait and see. Have we got someone? Yep.
Thank you. My name is Cesar Franco. I'd like to ask, how it's supposed that artificial intelligence is going to overcome human intelligence in 2045 at last. How much time will it take to be massive? I mean, this 2045 is like laboratory, but when is it going to be available for most of the humanity?
Okay, so this is somebody who wants to know how to live through the singularity, yeah?
Yes. Well, actually, even Wikipedia, in a way, is enhanced brains.
Sure.
Google is enhanced search mechanisms. My point is that it is not totally separate from us. We are going to merge with our technology, which is the point that you mentioned before. We are merging with our technology. So we will actually enhance our brains with this technology.
But when will we all be doing it? When will it be cheap enough that, and cheap enough and easy enough that it's like replacing your phone?
Well, let me give you an example. Very real, from IBM, 2 examples from IBM. In 1997, the first computer beat Garry Kasparov, who was the world champion in chess. And that computer, which was called Deep Blue, cost $100 million, and it took 10 years, 100 scientists. You can buy today the equivalent of Deep Blue for $10 in internet. And actually, no human can beat today a $10 software program for chess. Last year, IBM made another computer called Watson. And Watson won at this very complicated knowledge game called Jeopardy in the USA, which is very complicated because it's not just knowledge, like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, but also it has
strategy
and music and irony and jokes.
Yeah.
And people said that, computers will never understand jokes or will not understand music. And it doesn't matter if they understand it or not. The fact is that they beat humans.
I mean, what you're suggesting here is if we can survive for 10 years in the singularity, we'll be okay, because then we'll be able to afford whatever it's brought. What do you think? Do you think that's about right? Or anything else, indeed?
No, I think we have a lot of expectations about this, and I think the proponents of the concept of singularity seem to forget as a basis that we are a society of complex individuals ourselves. It takes time for things to happen. I'm from the computer science side of this. I'm a professor of software engineering. Take, for example, if you think about, quote, the singularity and how would that happen in the short, in the midterm, and whatever, who's going to design it in some sort of way? Who's going to actually make it happen? So if you say, okay, we have this whole number of stuff happening right now, how's that going to affect our learning and acting upon the things we want to do, even if we are enhanced in some sort of way, as we have been already. This thing about, okay, IBM wrote a computer, and I'm saying wrote a computer because you can compile it down to hardware, that actually plays Jeopardy and wins in some sort of situations. That's not a very creative game. You can actually think about that as a sort of a fixed rule games with a huge database. That's the same thing about chess. Chess is a completely idiotic game. You know, you don't need intelligence to play chess. Just one algorithm of deep search in trees. We have known that in computer science for ages.
Sorry, can I just check? Is the point that we just have big enough computers that they can do the search in time?
Oh, we have to have clever algorithms as well. It's not just big enough computers. Because take, for example, the most complicated game that computers couldn't play against humans is the game of Go. Go-moku, a Japanese game of strategy of actually filling spaces in a bidimensional board, right? you can actually do that right now. It's been published 3 months ago, a new kind of algorithms that searches trees in a way that with a sort of a normal supercomputer, you can beat any human. Right, but then again, that's just an algorithm.
But isn't everything an algorithm? I mean, it isn't to the point that we create something that's just about clever enough to create something that's just a bit cleverer, and then we're gone.
Yes, but then the point is, what is clever? What's creative? What are the real human endeavors? I mean, there is this very interesting book that was published. The surname of the author is Wilson. I don't remember the first name. It's called Love and Sex with Robots.
I've seen the title. I haven't read it.
It's in the same line. It's in the same line. I mean, think about it. Would you like, or would you want, or would it be desirable to have love and sex with robots? You know, this book was, important enough for the Pope to quote it, not directly, but in one of the papal speeches. The Pope said something that connected to the book, saying, "Okay, you are not really going to do that, are you? We are still talking about condoms here, and you were writing books about love and sex with
No,
robots."
but that's a great example. I mean, things don't move at a single speed. I mean, there are still people who are discussing, using condoms, to stop AIDS at the same time that there's somebody writing a book, Love and Sex with Robots. It's not like there's a single moment the singularity will happen, because there are just too many different speeds.
Yeah, and actually, because we are continuously enhancing ourselves, we might keep on moving on this accelerating curve and not notice. I mean, for those who want to get on the train. But again, there are the Yanomami, there are the Amish.
Yeah, they're an extreme case. I mean, there's also just basically late adopters like me. I don't start doing things until they're easy and everyone else has ironed out all the glitches. And it seems to work fine as a strategy.
Yeah, sure, and that's fine. And also it works. And let me show you another example. Talking about examples, this is a gene chip. This is how you will sequence your genome soon. Actually, we do this to all of our students in Singularity University. And I cannot see, but we should have 2 of our Brazilian students from Singularity University in 2010 and 2011 here. So they have also had their genome sequenced. But this used to cost $1 billion. $1 billion. This will cost about $10 in 2020, and everybody will use it.
Okay, this 10 years is coming back. The 10 years between.
Okay, well, I can tell you what it is now. Right now, for the full sequence of the genome, it's about a bit less than $2,000.
Yeah.
And for the partial sequencing, which is okay, it's only $100 today. But again, look at the time. The first one was done in 2003, and it cost $1 billion for the US government alone. So that's reality. I'm telling you, from 2003 to 2012, now it is just about $1,000, $2,000 for the full genome. And that's why I can tell you with certainty, because also the people working on this are some of our faculty at Singularity University. They say this will cost $10. And why? Because the human genome is not complicated. You know, some people might think that we are complicated. We are not. We are only 3 gigabytes of information, 3 gigabytes of information. This pen drive has 128 gigabytes of information. That means if you divide 128 gigabytes by 3...
But that's data.
That's data, yeah.
That's data.
Okay.
We're talking about
organized.
3 gigabytes. With a 3 gigabyte program, I can build a universe.
Yeah. So but anyway, let me finish, because if we, in terms of our data, of course, our hardware, which is 3 gigabytes, and this has 128, so 128 divided by 3, that gives 42.6 period. So here we can fit 42 Brazilians and 1 Uruguayan.
Do you want to make some final remarks?
Well, my final remarks is that, to start with, that's not going to happen in that sort of time frame. We're going to perceive, and we are perceiving already parts of it, and been perceiving parts of it ever since we started to write in 1400 before Christ, maybe. But some of that is clearly going to happen, and things like self-driving cars and self-driving airplanes and robots to have sex with will certainly happen. Most of us will be startled by this, but there is something about this, which is for the new people that will come around, for the newly borns, it will all be normal to them. So we don't need to worry about that. We live our normal sort of life from then until when it's possible. The new generations will not perceive it, will be just part of it. So whatever happens, it's going to be just like humanity has always been.
My younger son, who was 5 at the time, he said to me a few months ago, was there life on other planets? And I said, I didn't know, nobody knew. And he said, oh, just check on Google. And I realized to my astonishment that he genuinely thought Google knew absolutely everything, because he's just seen us for his entire life say, I'll just check that, I'll just check that, I'll just Google that, you know? And it was very hard. I don't think I fully succeeded in explaining to him that nobody knew that, and that therefore Google didn't. So he's a new person, but he's also not right. We don't know.
In some sort of way, yes.
Yeah.
Google will know in 10 years.
It won't know whether there's life in the rest of the universe. Come on, there's a whole information barrier there to do with the speed of light, and I'm getting dirty looks from
It will know.
our next panel, who is also my boss. Thank you
Cheers,
very
thanks.
much.
Bye-bye.